Okay, this is Unit 6A, looking at Math 1030, characterizing data, and in this unit we're going to get a little bit further into statistics. We're going to be looking at finding centers and kind of the middle of data, and looking at mean, median, mode, what those represent, how what we call outliers can affect those different categories and so forth. So we looked at in 5C, we looked at frequency tables, we looked at graphs, and they show us one or more, show us how one or more data variables are distributed over chosen categories. So we say that they describe what we call a distribution of the variables. So when we draw those graphs, those histograms, those line charts, and so forth, we see a distribution. For example, the variable for essay grades is the letter grades A, B, C, D, and F. So the distribution of essay grades shows how many people received each grade, and based off of those distributions, we also kind of get a shape, and we're going to be looking at those. But again, the distribution of a variable just refers to the way the values are spread over all possible values. And we can display the distribution with a table or with a graph. Now, in many cases, however, we are less interested in the complete distribution than in a few descriptive terms that summarize that distribution. So this unit, we're going to study how we can characterize a data distribution by its center or average and by its shape. And so the first question we have here is, what is the average? So we hear this term average. It's often used in a lot of different ways, a lot of different varieties, but it doesn't always have the same meaning. So we're going to begin our study by looking at three common ways that we can characterize the center. So these things are going to help us look at the center of the data distribution, as well as what we sometimes call the average, because again, we refer to this average as a general thing, but there are typically three different ways we're going to be looking at this. First is the mean. And it's the most commonly used average value. And the way you find the mean is you just add up all the values, so the sum of all the values divided by the total number of values that there are. And we'll see that in number 13. Another measure of center is the median. Okay, the median is the middle number when we have our data sorted out from lowest to highest. So it's halfway between, well, right in the middle, or if you line it all the way up and you end up having in the middle, you have two data values, it's right in the middle of those two data values. So again, we're going to look more at these, and then the mode is just the most common value or group of values. So there can be multiple modes. We call that bimodal or trimodal and so forth in distribution. So let's take a look here, and we are going to compute the mean, median, and mode of the following data sets. So again, with the mean, so you're going to take all of these numbers, 350 plus 360 plus 345 plus 340 plus, and you're just going to keep adding those up until you get to 358. So add all of them up, and then you're going to divide that quantity by the total number, and there are 9 entries in there. Okay, and when you add all those up and divide it out, you're going to get about 354.6 is going to be the mean of the data. And again, that's the most commonly used average. Now, if we want to find the median, what we've got to do is we've got to line these up in order from least to greatest. So 340, and it goes 345, 345. So there's a potential mode value. And then you go 350, 355, 358, 360. This can be tedious, so I'm going to show you another very helpful way to do that here shortly. So we've got them all lined up now, and we need to find the middle number. So what I like to do is I like to just kind of take 2 off the end here, take 2 more, 2 more, 2 more, and notice my middle number is 355. So the median in this case is going to be 355. Notice that it's very close to the mean in this one. We're just off by 4/10 there. And then lastly, the mode, which one occurs the most. We saw that when we line these up, 345 occurred twice. So the mode of this thing is going to be 345. So that's how you would find it when you have, a simple basic set of numbers. But as we get larger, or the numbers become a little more tedious, we're going to turn to technology. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to jump over into my math lab and show you an excellent technique and piece of technology that's available to you to use on that. Okay, so now I'm back in my math lab, and here's a question. So the data here is a little bit different than what I was going to go through, but I'll show you how to input that. So what you can do is, once you see this data, and you'll see these 2 little windows right here. If you click on those windows, you have the option to open in StatCrunch, copy to a clipboard, open Excel. We're going to use StatCrunch. You don't have to know very much about this program as far as how to utilize it, but notice that in the homework, when you click on that, it automatically populates the information. Now, we wanted to use these numbers right here for number 15, and so I'm going to again pause the video, and I'm just going to input these manually by hand. So I'm going to be putting in 0.27 and then hit enter and so forth. So I'm going to pause and get all those in. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got all my data put in here. You can come into your data, and if you'd like, you can sort the data. So I can sort this variable 1, this var1, that's the name of the column. I can sort it in ascending order. Oops. And so now you can see they're all sorted. You don't have to do that, but if you want a quick way to sort out your data, that is one quick way. And then once you have it all in here, you're going to click on Stat, then Summary Stats, and you're going to go by column, because columns run up and down. So we're going to go by columns, and you have to click the column. Again, it's called var1. So that's what it's going to look at. And then here are all the statistics it's going to give me. There's a lot of things in here that you may not recognize, but that's all right. When we hit compute, it gives us the mean, 0.1875. It gives us the median, 0.165. And then the mode, we can just look at the data and check it out. So, if we jump back over here, okay, we found that the mean was equal to 0.1875. And be careful when you're doing the mean to make sure that whatever it asks you to round to, that you round it to that. The median, it told us, was 0.165, and then the mode, it looks like 0.16 occurs in there 3 times. There's a couple others that appear twice, but 0.16 occurs 3 times, so that is our mode. So that's how you would use StatCrunch. Okay, now when we're looking at data, if we were to, so we're going to talk about this idea called outliers. And if we were to look at 5 graduating seniors on a men's college basketball team that receive first-year contracts by the National Basketball Association, the NBA. Now, 0, if you see a 0, that indicates the player didn't get a contract. So suppose that of these 5 graduates, 4 of them did not get a contract, but 1 of them got a $10 million contract. So then when we look at the mean contract offer, we take 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 10 million divided by the 5 and 2 million. So it looks like, the average senior on this basketball team received a $2 million contract. Is it fair to say that? Hopefully in this case you realize it's not really fair to say that, because one single person received something that was so much larger than everyone else. And if we ignore this one player and look at only the other 4, then the mean offer is 0. So because of the single value of 10 million, it's so extreme compared to the others, we call this thing an outlier or an outlying value. And what happens with these outliers is the outliers can pull the mean significantly upward or downward, depending on whether it's really positive. Well, if it's a lot greater than the rest of the numbers or a lot less than the number. So what happens is then the mean becomes unrepresentative of the data set as a whole because of those outliers. Now, outliers pull the mean. In this instance, they pulled the mean contract offer upward. It actually has no effect on the median contract because the median still remains at 0 for the 5 players. So in general, the value of an outlier has little or no effect on either the mean, or excuse me, the median or the mode, because the outliers don't lie in the middle. They lie on the outside. They're not common values. And so there's your definition of an outlier. Again, it's just in a data set is a data value that is much larger or much lower than almost all other values, and it can change the mean of a data set, but generally does not affect the median or the mode. And if it does affect the median, so not really looking at the mode right now, but if it does affect the median, it's usually a much, much smaller effect. So again, here's just a general table as far as how to find each of these, how common these things are used, whether or not they exist, and affected by outliers, some of the advantages to them. Take a minute and look over that chart, but again, we'll be looking mostly at the mean and the median when we use these, because modes are sometimes used. They're more used when we look at the shape of the graph, but they're not as useful as the median and the mean in a lot of cases we are going to look at. Okay, so in this one, we're going to look at the margin of victory. So the following data gives the margin of victories in Super Bowls from 2003 to 2017. So each of these data points represent how much the team won by in the Super Bowl over those set of years. And so we're going to find the mean and median, and then identify some outliers, and then eliminate that outlier and see what happens. So I'm going to jump back over to StatCrunch and put that in. So one moment. Okay, so I've jumped over to StatCrunch. Again, it can be accessed through your homework, and I've got all of my values here in the table, and they don't need to be in order unless you would really like them to. Again, you just click on data and then you're going to sort, but in this case I'm just going to do summary stats. So remember, if you want these, you go summary stats and then columns, because we're running in columns. We're using var1, so make sure you select var1, so that's over in here. Okay, all of these that are grayed is going to give us the different items that we're needing. So we can see the mean is in there, the median's in there, so that's what we want. We hit compute. We can see that we get a median of 9.93 repeating. So the average margin of victory from the mean standpoint is 9.93. The median is 6. So you can see that that outlier of 35 pulls the median quite a bit. So we go from 9.93 down to 6 on that median. So there's a pretty drastic effect when we look at that median there. So on part A, the mean is 9.93. The median was 6. So I'm going to have to end this video because I'm running out of time, but we'll continue in part B, what happens when we remove that outlier of 35 right here, which is so much greater than all of the other values. You could also potentially look at 27. We're just going to remove the 35 and see how that affects it. And again, we'll do that in the next video.